Welcome back to Brother Wolf, Sister Moon Divination. Hello, my dear fellow spirit workers. I hope you're doing well. Today, I wanted to read from Robert Wang's The Jungian Tarot and its Archetypal Imagery. So, really important element in our understanding of the tarot and expanding our understanding of the meanings of the cards and how we can incorporate and use these different archetypes in our day-to-day life within ourselves and then interacting with others and using the tarot almost as if a vision board. You know, I gave a video on using the tarot for spell work and as a sort of vision board. And so you can also then use that same archetypal overlay in your interactions with different people in the world around you and gain deeper insights and understandings and hopefully improve those relationships and to better understand where people are coming from and what archetype they're embodying in that moment. But we always have to start with the self. Okay, so I'm going to read some selected portions of this. I hope you'll enjoy it. One of Jung's major contributions was his suggestion that a man has within his unconscious a female personality, anima, and that a woman has within her unconscious a male personality, animus. These are the opposites which one strives to resolve. For a man to know the anima, his own contrasexual component, as Jung described it, to resolve the dualities of the self, is to achieve what traditional literature has called enlightenment, what Jung called individuation. Jung said, "I use the term individuation to denote the process by which a person becomes a psychological individual that is a separate, indivisible unity or whole. That process for either a man or a woman is symbolized by the creation of the Son, who is the perfected self in manifestation. The tarot can be understood as descriptive of the various activities of integral opposites, whatever they are called, force and form, male and female within the self. Theoretically, the fool spirit creates the magician, the first male, from which emerges the high priestess, the first female. All of the cards are understood to show these opposites in various garbs, at various levels, and in different situations of consciousness. 18th and 19th century esotericists, developed some complicated intellectual systems about the cards, which they expressed in curiously dispassionate terms, often throughout lengthy charts and complex lists of symbolic forms and colors. Analytical psychology per se did not exist, and it was up to the individual to recognize personal implications of symbols. Today, Jung's methodology points the way toward a direct understanding of the card images as psychological conditions and as personal experiences. Purposeful interaction with what he called archetypes can be an overwhelming emotional experience. It can produce unparalleled insights into the self. It can also be devastating, even dangerous. Beyond an appreciation of Jung's overview of opposites, his work is easily related to the tarot if his special and occasional idiosyncratic terminology is understood. Jungian psychology depends upon a few underlying principles which, once grasped, will be recognized throughout the psychologist's writing. As his book emerged, it was seen that Jung repeated himself over and over again, defining and redefining the same ideas in ever more precise language. The collective unconscious. At the core of Jung's system is the idea that the psyche is a total self divisible into two key parts, the conscious and the unconscious. The hidden side, an unconscious which is personal to the individual, borders on a greater unconscious which all people share. Jung called this shared unconscious the collective unconscious. My thesis, he wrote, is as follows. In addition to our immediate consciousness, which is of a thoroughly personal nature, and which we believe to be the only empirical psyche, even if we tack on the personal unconscious as an appendix, there exists a second psyche system of a collective, universal, and impersonal nature, which is identical in all individuals. This collective unconscious does not develop individually, but is inherited. It consists of pre-existent forms, the archetypes, which can only become conscious secondarily, and which give definite form to certain psychic contents. He further said that the collective unconscious is part of the psyche, which can be negatively distinguished from a personal unconscious by the fact that it does not, like the latter, owe its existence to personal experience and consequently is not a personal acquisition, whereas the personal unconscious consists, for the most part, of complexes. The content of the collective unconscious is made up of essentially of archetypes. Jung's attempt to define aspects of the total self is not new. The divisions for which Jung developed a psychological language have traditionally been described in the language of mystical symbolism. For example, in symbolic literature, wherever water appears, it generally refers to the unconscious, and where planets are mentioned, it is often to represent psychological types or categories of emotional states. Jung created new terms to express what visionaries have said for many centuries. The psychologists would certainly have agreed with the poet William Butler Yeats, who in 1912 stated his belief in three doctrines. 1. That the borders of our mind are ever shifting, and that many minds can flow into one another, as it were, and create or reveal a single mind, a single energy. 2. That the borders of our memories are as shifting, and that our memories are a part of one great memory, the memory of nature herself. And 3, that this great mind and great memory can be evoked by symbols. The term archetype has been used since ancient times, though never with the specificity that Jung applied it. Indeed, what Plato termed archetypes are absolute essences, rather than cultural imprints, as Jung explained them. Jung said that archetypes are deposits of the constantly repeated experiences of humanity. He called them primordial images. The number and form of these archetypes, created by human experience, is limitless. They can appear as specific personalities, such as those suggested in the archetypal images of the tarot cards, personalities which are like dream images with which one can converse in imagination, or they can be situations, or they can be places. In the most simple of terms, archetypes are conceived as something deeply buried in each person, which in toto make up what is called the collective unconscious. When these archetypes enter the individual consciousness, they take on the color and tone of the personality which perceives them. Thus, Jung repeatedly points out that the archetypes are not determined by their content. They are not a kind of unconscious idea. The archetypes are, he says, encountered at first only as forms without content, representing merely the possibility of a certain type of perception and action. All of this sounds more complicated than it really is. The principle is that each person has within, for example, an idea of mother, which is not purely individual, but which has been built up for centuries as a socially determined concept, and to which interaction with the actual mother is related. In the tarot, archetypal mother figure is seen as the Empress. She is Hera in Greek mythology. She is the Egyptian Isis. She is Hans Christian Andersen's Snow Queen. Indeed, archetypes are best seen at work in mythology. The pattern of Greek and Roman gods, those of fairy tales, and of the most imaginative, apparently irrational, of the non-canonical Christian Gospels are especially instructive. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, emphasizes the miraculous and presents a young Christ who can be a genuinely nasty and vindictive little boy. It would seem that the more miraculous the events described, and the more polar the behavior of the key figures, the closer to the archetype of the collective unconscious. And so this book is so insightful, and it goes on to examine and do a deep dive into the symbols of the different trump cards in the major arcana. And so I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 11, The Wheel of Fortune. Archetype of the Mother as Fortuna. Now, Jung is also fascinated by mandalas. So the mandalas are coming from Tibetan Buddhism, where these little intricate drawings and sometimes made of sand of different colors. Are like a deep meditation. And Jung recognizes this as an important archetype, and some of his methods were to have people draw just free form, go drawing a mandala. Whatever comes into it is a way to connect to the unconscious, and a wonderful meditation. The archetype of the mandala. If the principle of archetype is more than merely a seductively clever philosophical postulate, And if there is actually such a thing as an archetypal symbol, a cross-cultural look at ideas about the circle should reveal a great deal about the nature of the most pure archetypes. Does the image of a circle evoke something similar in everyone, regardless of their cultural orientation? The answer seems generally to be yes. Indeed, Jung said that he felt it probable that we are dealing with an a priori type, an archetype which is inherent in the collective unconscious, and thus individual birth and death. The mandala is the most important visual sign of Jungian psychology in that it represents the totality of self, both conscious and unconscious. It is enclosing and protective, like the Greek temenos, temple compound. Jung taught that insofar as the mandala encompasses, protects, and defends the psychic personality against outside influences and seek to unite the inner opposites, it is at the same time a distinct individuation symbol and was known as such even to medieval alchemy. The figure of Fortuna on the Jungian tarot card is that of the mother who determines the experience of the son, but who may be also be protective. Jung stressed that the mandala can be a form of mother archetype. The practical value of the mandala is to focus what would otherwise be diffused and chaotic. Jung stated that all of the unconscious mythological materials, such as those encountered in the tarot, form a multiplicity that culminates in a concentric or radial order, which constitutes the true center or essence of the collective unconscious. A similar point is made by Plato, who says that the universe is in the form of a sphere, and that the center of the world cannot be rightly called above or below, but is the center and nothing else. The soul of man reflects that of the universe, and is also considered to be spherical. The philosophies of Jung and of Plato are in complete agreement about the special nature of the central point of the sphere. Jung took the Sanskrit word for circle, mandala, to describe this form because of what he called a remarkable agreement between the insights of yoga and the results of psychological research. The basic motif of the mandala, Jung explains, is a premonition of a center, of a personality, and a kind of central point within the psyche to which everything is related, by which everything is arranged, and which is itself a source of energy. This center is not felt or thought of as ego, if one may so express it, as the self, although the center is represented by an innermost point. It is surrounded by a periphery containing everything that belongs to the self, the paired opposites that make up the total personality. This totality comprises consciousness first of all, then the personal unconscious, and finally an identifiable large segment of the collective unconscious whose archetypes are common to all mankind. So consider this, and consider making your own little doodle, your own little mandala, you know, see where it takes you. I'm a big proponent of crafts and art, and as a way of, you know, writing also, poetry, whatever it is. But try this mandala drawing. Jung adds that a true mandala is always an inner image which is gradually built up through active imagination at such times when psychic equilibrium is disturbed or when a thought cannot be found that must be sought for, because it is not contained in holy doctrine. So what I'm getting from that is that, you know, these are some guidelines. You can make whatever you want to make. The point what Jung is making here is that as we're just zoning out, drawing our little doodle, we're getting access to the unconscious, that we're not forcibly thinking about something, and it's just like sort of free association and allowing the images to pop up, whatever little squiggle or image or caricature that pops up, it's going to have some kind of meaning or importance that comes from that hidden realm of the unconscious. So Freud, the one-time colleague of Jung, argued that dreams are another way that we gain access. Those weird symbols that we see in dreams, the nonsensical aspects of dream logic, are also glimpses in ways that we can get into the unconscious. So consider doing that, and you know, you could even turn it into a vision board, right? But the goal here is to get those secret messages that are deep within the unconscious, that we're not going to consciously be able to think about. It's deeper than that. So this drawing, this doodling of your mandala, however you want to make it, is a meditative process. It kind of gets us in a zone, and that's where we get these insights and messages that are whispering up from the unconscious. Okay, so I highly recommend this book. As you see, it goes into great detail with each card, its symbolism. It's very insightful. So I hope you'll consider getting one. I read this, I was first introduced to this at a public library a long time ago, and I've always been looking for it, but I did find it. So I wanted to share that with you. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Okay. And of course, there's also lots of free resources on the internet about Jung and the tarot. So check that out. Okay. So I wish you well, be well, many blessings. I hope you liked the video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you soon. And as always, God is love.